This meeting is now being recorded.
Okay, so welcome again, everyone, to our webinar today on the Alliance's Behavior Change Communication Strategy and Activities in 2016. This is Julie Ice speaking. I'm the manager for market research here at the Alliance, and I'm joined by Brian Smith, who's our Chief Operating Officer. And today we'll be providing you with an overview of the Alliance's Behavior Change Communication Strategy and Activities for 2016. So why are we here today? Again, we'll be going over that behavior change communication strategy, and which I'll refer to as BCC throughout the rest of the presentation, since that's a little shorter and easier to swallow. And BCC is a relatively new program area for us here at the Alliance. It's not a term that we hear so often in our sector either. So we'll start by just going through, what is behavior change communication? What do we mean exactly when we say that? How does it fit into the Alliance's strategy? And then we'll give some background on how it's been used in other sectors. And then also talk about a few examples of where it has been used in our clean cooking sector. And then we'll go over how the Alliance is engaging in BCC. And then finally, we'll talk a little bit about what's in it for you. So, how can all of our partners benefit from this work, and talk through some of the direct funding opportunities that we'll have available as well. So with that, I'll go ahead and hand things over to Brian to get us started on what is behavior change communication.
Yeah, thanks very much, Julie. Good morning, everyone. We're here today to talk about changing behaviors, but I just wanted to start with why we're working in this field to begin with. We're working in this field to reach her, the image you see there, her household, her family. We've chosen just one woman and child here, but she could be in rural Africa, or she could be in a poor urban area, or a peri-urban area, or in Asia, or in Latin America. Wherever she is, she's cooking in a way that's not as efficient as it could be, or it has higher emissions than it could, and that's hurting her quality of life. She may not be aware of better options. She may not be able to find them or access them, and she may not be hearing about that. Chances are, though, that she's hearing about all sorts of other things, about malaria, about HIV, about family planning, about better farming techniques. She may be hearing that from the radio, from posters, billboards, doctors, community outreach workers, and those programs are probably publicly funded. Promoting products and increasing sales of those products, but probably not promoting any one brand or company, but just putting her in a position to make informed choices. And she probably is changing her behaviors, in part because of those programs. We want to make that happen in our sector and faster. And if we do our work well, if we run effective behavior change communications or BCC programs, if we do more and better in BCC, she'll adopt cleaner and more efficient cookstoves as well. So that's why, another reason why we're here. Just to start with what is behavior change communications, there's a lot of definitions out there. This is just one chosen from Wikipedia. And this is a definition about using communications to reach people, to promote behaviors. The definition goes on, if you look at Wikipedia, to talk about the importance of understanding your audience, what motivates them, what makes them afraid, what makes them happy, how to convince them to try something new, not preaching to them about, but treating them with dignity as someone who has choices to make. So that's a long definition there. But if we simplify it, it comes down to basically that. Communication to promote behaviors. What do we mean by communication? Well, it's a variety of channels. So maybe radio, television, newspapers, what have you. A variety of channels chosen carefully to carry different messages at different times. In our case, behaviors basically means this: purchase and use of improved cookstoves and fuels. So getting the cookstoves and fuels into the home and making sure that people use them consistently. So that means that this could be or is behavior change communication. We call that interpersonal communication, a community outreach community meeting. It also means this is behavior change communication, street theater, very effective way of communicating with people. But it also means this is behavior change communication, because this is what good marketers of products do too. They promote behaviors. Now, they may not be the healthiest behaviors in this case, but they are behaviors. And the best product marketers are actually experts at behavior change communication. And those who are best at BCC are essentially great marketers. So we have a lot to learn from each other. Each tap into aspirations about their target audience and get them to try something new or try it more frequently. And they come up with memorable slogans as well, like this. It's also behavior change communication, one of the great examples of aspirational marketing that we have out there, of course, by Nike. So as we think about BCC, we shouldn't just think about sort of outreach workers talking to men and women in community meetings, but also think about how we tap into the hopes and dreams of the people we're trying to reach, and through many different channels. So let's shift gears a little bit and just talk about how this fits into the alliances strategy. Some of you are probably familiar with this diagram. It was developed by stakeholders who defined the alliance's 10-year strategy. It divides up into 3 broad areas. Over the last 5 years, the alliance and its partners have made significant progress towards developing a thriving clean cookstove and fuels market, in particular in fostering an enabling environment. That's one aspect, and in strengthening supply. So we've worked on testing and standards, building an evidence base, supporting enterprises with grants. But generating demand and sustained use at scale remains a challenge in many markets. And we hear this all the time, and I'm sure you do too. So it goes something like, okay, we've got better products now, and we have production capacity, but we need help getting these products to market. We need help getting them in front of people and convincing them to buy. So this year, the Alliance is fortunate enough to have funding to expand its efforts to address the challenge with increased support for behavior change communication and hopefully enhance demand in that way. So if we move a little bit more into specifics, where does BCC fit into the Alliance's strategy? What's the objective and the challenge here, really? So just to keep it in perspective, we're after adoption, right? Adoption of stoves and fuels that deliver benefits. That's what we're all striving for. Adoption, we know, is not precisely defined, but we know it's a function of intensity of use over time, of cleaner and more efficient technologies, displacing those that are not. So, getting it into the house is not enough. We also have to get people to use it. In other fields that use behavior change communication, this is called correct and consistent use. We're trying to get to correct and consistent use of stoves and fuels. We also know that benefits increase as correct and consistent use increases, and substantial health benefits appear to require very high use. So to get to adoption, we need to overcome barriers to correct and consistent use. That's the way behavior change people would talk about it, overcoming barriers to correct and consistent use. Okay, let's dig in a little deeper on that. How do we do that? So first, we need to get the stove or fuel into the household. And in a market-based approach, that means someone purchasing a stove. We're not giving away here in a market-based approach. Second, when the stove or fuel is purchased, it needs to be used. Our work doesn't stop once the stove is in the household. We need to encourage people to use it consistently. So basically, we need to overcome barriers to purchase and use to get to correct and consistent use. Other fields have found it helpful. So we draw on theory, behavior change theory a little bit here. Other fields have found it helpful to group the barriers under headings of what are called opportunity, ability, and motivation. It's helpful to group this way because it helps you think about the different interventions that are needed to overcome those barriers. So supply-side interventions can address many opportunity barriers by making sure that the product is out there and that the person we're trying to reach, that woman we saw at the very beginning, that she has the opportunity to practice this behavior because she can find the product she needs. Demonstrations, after-sales service, consumer finance can overcome key ability barriers, making people able to practice the behavior. And then behavior change communication can then address many motivational barriers. So what we're saying then is that BCC can motivate purchase and use. And just to pause on that last point, individual companies, individual firms, enterprises do this as well. They motivate purchase and use as well. So think back to the Coke billboard or the Just Do It slogan. They're promoting their brands and their products, and they sell, and we know this, right? They sell lots of fizzy drinks and sports shoes. You know, so why don't we just take our money and give it to the firms, the businesses, to promote their brands? It's a good question. In part, the answer is we don't do that because the Alliance and its partners, all of us, we aren't interested in just one brand of cookstove or one type of fuel. We'd like to generate consumer pull for a whole category of products. We need to create informed demand for that category so that producers and distributors then have customers to sell to. In the marketing world, we would call this category marketing or category promotion. Again, the category being cleaner and more efficient cookstoves and fuels. It's challenging because there are actually subcategories in there, but generally we would call this category promotion. So marketing or behavior change communication that generates demand across the entire category. And that's something Alliance is very interested in. So what do we mean by category promotion? Maybe just to put it in contrast to traditional marketing. So marketing often centers on brands, and it aims to increase the market share of that brand rather than the overall size of the market. Category promotion, in contrast, is intended to increase the size of the market, to convert need and demand for any product in the category. Again, the category being cleaner and more efficient stoves and fuels. So that could be subdivided. So that's what we mean by category building. Now, there's a long history of category promotion in the developed world, some in the developing world, but certainly in the developed world, there's a long history of this. So this is a technique that works, not something we're making up. There's examples of industries that have pooled together to promote their category. If you lived in the U.S., and I'm sorry for choosing U.S.-centric examples here, but if you lived in the U.S., then you may be familiar with this campaign, the Incredible Edible Egg. That was the egg industry trying to promote increased purchase and consumption of eggs. You may remember this one. Actually, a lot of people don't remember this one. Pork is the other white meat, in case you were wondering. They were trying to contrast their, pork with chicken, basically. Chicken was more popular, and pork was positioned as the other white meat to try to drive sales of pork. And then there's the Got Milk campaign. Right, so this was the dairy industry, actually started in California doing this, trying to promote the entire category of milk, not one particular brand. Just a poster that they use for that, kind of interesting. So I think we have a lot to learn for this sort of campaign, and we have a lot to learn from other sectors as well. So we have a lot to learn from how people have done category promotion, but we also have a lot to learn from how people have used it in other sectors. Because BCC is, in fact, the cornerstone of many health programs in developed and developing countries. It tends to engage a broad range of players, from governments to civil society to private sector, so you get a lot of different partners coming together, bringing their expertise together to promote change. It's also very well-funded. So there are some well-funded and long-running programs in behavior change communication. And you know, it may be about malaria, it may be HIV, it may be family planning, but these are programs that are funded in the 8 figures. So we're talking tens of millions of dollars devoted to these areas. Tens of millions of dollars devoted to areas that, in fact, have less of a health burden than household air pollution. And they're long-running programs, so we're talking about multi-year programs that are funded. There's also evidence of success that attracts further funding. And it's increasingly used as part of a market-based approach, right? So again, we're not just talking about giving products away or services away. We're actually talking about selling things. So there's a long history to this, and there is evidence that it works. So this is just a slide. It's part of an infographic from the social marketing evidence base. You can read that. It's a little blurry, but you'll note that it's about product use in many cases. So it's increased the use of whether it be condoms or mosquito nets or family planning products. It has actually increased the use of products and therefore increased the sales of the companies selling those products. So these are, in a sense, category promoting interventions that have gone on here. Maybe just to give one specific example of how it's been used. This is an example from a project called Netmark, which started around 2000 and was funded by USAID. And they were essentially trying to do, for mosquito nets, what we're trying to do for stoves and fuels. Promote a category, change behaviors, change a culture through a market-based approach. It was a well-funded project. What you're seeing here is their billboards and some wall painting there. Translating the thing on the left, basically they came up with an Africa-wide slogan that they translated locally. It's very simple. Mosquitoes kill, kill mosquitoes. That was their entire slogan for that, and you're seeing that here. They also did TV spots, and we just want to show you one example of a TV spot that Netmark did to promote the category of insecticide-treated nets.
Is the volume playing?
Right. So, no, I don't think I hope everyone is able to see that. So basically, again, not promoting any one particular brand of mosquito net, although there were many companies partnering with Netmark to increase their distribution and sales, but promoting the entire category, basically. And as you can see, they also developed a seal of approval so that consumers knew which were the nets that were actually qualified, that were actually effective insecticide-treated nets. So that's a little bit about how BCC has been used in other sectors. Just turning to how it's been used in our sector, and most of what I'm going to say comes from two studies that were funded by DFID. So these are observations that come from these two studies. We can give you the links to them later. And here's what they found. So how has it been used in our sector? Mostly small-scale interventions. In contrast, again, to other sectors, generally not sustained for a long period of time. Few of them were formally evaluated, so that means you get few lessons learned that people can share and learn from and grow from. Really not that many of them using theory to inform their interventions, so that's perhaps a missed opportunity. Interesting, there's some players, so there's some, whether it's governments or civil society organizations who have really strong reach with the same people we're trying to reach. So they may have programs in agriculture or health. They're talking to the same consumers, and yet they're sitting on the sidelines when it comes to clean cooking, when it comes to household air pollution. So there's an opportunity there for mainstreaming with these players who have very strong reach and a track record of changing behaviors. So there's a lot of room to increase integration with other development sectors. Again, relatively few resources. I talked a little bit about that as a contrast to some other sectors. And there's really little category promotion, and to the extent it's there, it's not really at scale. So these are some of the things that we'd like to improve on. And we're going to talk a little bit about that, what resources we have to help with that. But I mean, I don't want to leave the impression that there isn't good work going on in our sector. There is some very good work going on in our sector. We don't have time to highlight all of that, but we did want to highlight one that we thought was particularly good. So we're going to show you another video. Julie, do you want to, or maybe I'll...
Sure. Do you want me to go ahead and
yeah,
see it
go
up?
ahead, yeah.
Yeah, so the video we're going to share is from Ecuador. And as many of you might be aware, the Ecuadorian government is currently in the process of trying to transition basically the entire country rather, from using gas for cooking to electricity, which is a rather ambitious undertaking. And they're doing a lot of, videos that really employ behavior change communication to try and help facilitate that change. And they're doing very good work. So we're going to go ahead and share the video. It's in Spanish, which of course is appropriate because it's in Ecuador. So if you can understand Spanish, that's great. But I'll play it through once and then sort of talk through, the overall approach that they're taking, and then maybe play it one more time. So let me just get that teed up right here. Okay. Okay, so hopefully you all were able to see and hear the video. For those of you who were not able to understand it because it's in Spanish, I'll just quickly sort of go through, the overall approach that they're taking. So as you can see, they have a very clear target audience with this video. They're targeting sort of the older generation, and they've clearly identified sort of the barrier is just, resistance to change. So for the older generation, they've been using gas for cooking for, most of their lives, probably most of their later lives. It's a tough change to make. And so the way they approach it is sort of comparing to other things that have changed over the years. So, we used to watch TVs in black and white. Now we have color. Our phones used to have cords on them. Now they're all wireless. And so this is just another change that's part of our life. And so, the overall tagline is, we were born to change. And so I'll just play it one more time. And just hopefully from the imagery you can sort of see, again, this how they're going through the different changes that have been experienced over, people's lives. So I'll just play it one more time. So you see they're using, people who would represent this generation to sort of serve as the, providers of the testimonials and talking through, these various changes, talking about the cordless phones. Phones are recorded, now they're cordless. And then, showing the target audience using the new stove. So we thought this is quite a good example of behavior change communication being used in our sector. The Ecuadorian government has produced a couple of other videos which are quite good, which I encourage you to take a look at. Some of which really go through, what is the difference between gas and electricity in terms of how it delivers heat for cooking, and then, providing assurances that it won't, change the taste of food or compromise flavor in any way. So they've taken a very thoughtful approach, and like I said, they had a clear target audience for this particular video, and were clearly addressing what they saw as the barrier to change, which is all good hallmarks, or all hallmarks of good behavior change communication. So with that, we'll go back to our presentation. Okay. And we'll go ahead and talk about how the Alliance is engaging in behavior change communication. So as Brian mentioned before, there certainly has been some behavior communication work in our sector. We just showed you a good example of it, but it's been limited. And so, as you mentioned, our goal is really to facilitate more and better behavior change communication for the clean cooking sector. So by more, we of course mean at much greater scale, reaching more people. But we also want to ensure that the communication that's being used is appropriate and evidence-based and leads to real impact. So that's where the better comes in. So again, our overall objective is more and better behavior change for the clean and efficient cooking sector. And we have two key components for achieving that goal. One is through initiatives directly funded by the Alliance, which as Brian mentioned before, we're fortunate to have relatively substantial funding for that, but it's certainly not nearly enough to reach the scale and reach the hundreds of millions of people who are affected by this issue. So we're also working to mainstream this issue into other sectors who are already using behavior change communication. And you can sort of see how one follows the other. And so the strategy there is that by directly supporting evidence-based interventions that are evaluated and generate lessons learned, that will have those learnings and those successes to share with other sectors and also with funders, so that we can attract more resources and more organizations addressing our issue with behavior change communication. And so in terms of our direct Alliance funding initiatives, you'll see we have a list here of what we call small-scale interventions, which are currently in the planning process or underway, and I'll go through those in more detail in the next slide. And then we have our large-scale interventions, enterprise marketing support, national communication strategies. We'll be doing this at a relatively limited scale to start out. And then, of course, the evaluation and learning sharing. And then, so in addition to, just sharing the learnings from our directly funded interventions with our sector and beyond, in order to help mainstream this issue into other sectors, we'll also be providing tools and resources to make it just easier for organizations to incorporate stove and fuel messaging into their work. And then we'll also work to directly set up partnerships with organizations who are already reaching our target audience. So again, this could be, NGOs already have a large presence on the ground and who, have been working in the behavior change communication field for a long time for other health-related issues like malaria or HIV/AIDS. But it could also be, media partnerships, so TV programming that's reaching our target audience, or even corporates who are, already selling goods and communicating with our target audience. So we'll look to set up those partnerships as well, again, so that we can reach, greater scale than with just our own direct funding. So I also wanted to mention our reference group. So this is a group of experts in behavior change that we've put together to really help us, to help steer us through our strategy. And so, this includes researchers, donors, and implementers with experience in the cooking sector as well as other sectors. And we have representatives from a few different NGOs as well as universities, the World Bank, et cetera. And again, the role of the reference group is really to help steer us through our strategy and also help us identify what are those barriers to getting to that more and better behavior change communication with our sector, and what can we do to overcome those barriers. I'll talk more about the large-scale interventions in the next few slides, but just to note that our reference group has provided input into the RFP that we'll release for those, and we'll form the expert panel to help review those. And then they'll also be advising us on those, knowledge, products, and tools and resources that we're looking to provide, again, to inspire more and better behavior change communication within our own sector and then beyond. So the first of our directly funded interventions that I'll go over are what we call the small-scale interventions, and these really build from research with consumers that we've commissioned over the last couple of years. And that research really helped us identify, which consumer segments are most poised to make the transition to cleaner stoves and fuels in the near term, and also gave us an idea of, the baseline in terms of what their current stove and fuel usage looks like, and provided us with insights on how best to reach and motivate those potential consumers. So these small-scale interventions really provide us with an opportunity to test some of those hypotheses from the research and learn more about what works and what doesn't work in practice. And they were designed, in close coordination with our national alliances. So lots of partner input into these. And we are hoping to complete these interventions in 2016 in 4 of our focus countries. So that's Bangladesh, Ghana, Guatemala, and Uganda. And just to reemphasize, these are, as the name suggests, they're small scale. So they're certainly not, national level awareness raising or behavior change communication campaigns, but rather very targeted at the, specific consumer segments that we identified from the research that are sort of the most poised or the earliest adopters of, cleaner stoves and fuels in these countries, and they're targeted at specific regions. And they're, providing us an opportunity to test various channels. So just to give you a flavor here of, some of the channels we're using, there's interpersonal communication. So this is, one-on-one or, one person to one small group communication via NGOs as well as women's groups. We're using radio, so DJ mentions, spot ads, interviews on the radio, market days and road shows. Some of you may be familiar with these, but they, offer an opportunity for, engagement with the potential consumers, and it's sort of an interactive and entertaining experience. And then it also provides an opportunity for, stove marketers or manufacturers and distributors to demonstrate their products and allow, consumers to see how they work firsthand. And then, given the ubiquity of, mobile phones among our target audience, we're also looking at using mobile messaging to communicate with those consumers. And every campaign, we're not relying on one channel alone, but rather using multiple channels because, I think with any type of communication, but particularly with behavior change communication, intensity and repetition is very important. So it's unlikely that you would, hear about something one time and take action. It often takes, multiple exposures in order to facilitate that. So we're using multiple channels to build one cohesive campaign in all of these countries. And then we're testing a variety of creative concepts and messages in each. And again, these are based on what sort of emerged from our consumer research. So you'll see some, common themes that we hear about in our sector. So the health benefits, convenience, stoves as an aspirational product, money savings, et cetera. So it would be really interesting for us to see, sort of what works, what doesn't work. We often find that when you talk about health and the impacts on, women as themselves, but more importantly, their family and their children, it really grabs their attention. But I think we have yet to see whether it will actually motivate people to take action. So it will be really interesting for us to test that. And so while we're sort of finalizing those small-scale interventions, we're getting things teed up for the larger-scale interventions, which, as you might guess by the name of these, they're at a larger scale. And we're anticipating that these interventions would be implemented by organizations who, have experience with behavior change communication and have those networks on the ground. And they'll be selected through a competitive RFP that, again, we've designed with input from our reference group as well as some other key players in the sector. And we're anticipating that these campaigns will be to the tune of around $1 million each, maybe slightly more, and that there will be 3 to 4 of those lasting about 2 years. And our funding is limited to our focus countries, and due to donor restrictions, we're not able to use this funding in China or India. So while I can't say exactly which countries these will take place in, because it will depend on the proposals we get, they will be in either Guatemala, Ghana, Nigeria, Uganda, Kenya, or Bangladesh. But again, we'll know more after we have reviewed the proposals. And also wanted to highlight that there will be a strong evaluation component to these. So while the goal with these is to reach scale and reach, since we're the spending is a much higher level than at the smaller scale interventions, we're hoping to reach more in the millions of people. So that's certainly a goal, but the other goal is also to show results. And again, this is so that we continue to make the case for more people to engage in behavior change communication for our sector, and also for more funding to be allocated towards this. So results will be very important there. In terms of the timeline, the RFP was out for public comment from January 11th to the 22nd. So thanks to those who have commented. And then the plan is to release that for proposals in February, with awards made in April and agreements finalized by June. So hoping to have this all launched by around July, August. So that's the large-scale interventions. And then for enterprise marketing support, so, as we've been mentioning throughout, and has, Brian described in detail earlier, our goal with the, the small and the large-scale interventions and behavior change communication more broadly is to really build the category of clean and efficient stoves. So we're not necessarily supporting one particular brand with those efforts, but we certainly understand the importance of, individual businesses being able to market their own brands. So another component of our direct funding strategy is to provide grants to enterprises to support their marketing efforts for their own brands. And we're likely to require a match there. We haven't finalized what percentage that would be, but that's what we're thinking there. And these would be, relatively small amounts, so not to exceed about $25,000 each. And our idea there is that the RFPs would not sort of be released for anyone to apply to, but would be released on a country-by-country basis. And this is, again, our focus countries, except for India and China, where we're not able to use this funding. And we're expecting to make about 5 grants per country. And we may combine this with other grant programs and capacity building work that's provided by the Alliance. And again, here, learning is a priority. We really want to give enterprises the opportunity to take risks here. So, try something new, try a new channel, try, a new creative concept or approach, and so that we can, all learn about what works and what doesn't work. So learning is a priority here, and sharing those learnings will also be a priority. So, if you're an enterprise and you're interested in this support, just note that we will ask you to share your results publicly. So in terms of the timeline for this, we're anticipating that the initial RFPs would be released starting in March. Again, that will be on a country-by-country basis, and it'll be on a rolling basis, so we won't release RFPs for all of our focus countries in March, but that's when the initial ones will be released, and that will likely be for 2 countries. And then we're expecting those initial awards would be made in May, with the first round of grant agreements finalized in June or July. So that takes us through sort of, our direct funding interventions for the Alliance.
Yeah, maybe just to wrap up, and then we'll turn it over to questions and answers. So, what is success? So, and I mean success for all of us, right? So whether it's the Alliance Secretariat sitting back here or all of you working in this field, what is success for all of us? If we're implementing evidence-based programs, that would be success. If we're learning from those programs, and if we're learning from other sectors to make our programs stronger, and if we're sharing that knowledge with each other to strengthen our work. So that means to strengthen players already active in the sector, but as we discussed, also attracting new players into our sector because they have a lot of expertise to offer to us. So forging partnerships across sectors. And then generating evidence that we can do this, that we can implement BCC effectively in our sector, which hopefully will attract more funding for additional programs, right? So it's got to be sort of a self-reinforcing thing. We run good programs that attracts more funding. We can run even more good programs and get to scale. And so ultimately changing behaviors and getting to a culture of use. And that is sort of, to summarize, that's what we mean when we talk about getting to more and better, all of that. That's what we're trying to get to. With that, I think we'll turn it over to question and answer. Maybe Julie, you can give the logistics again for that.
Sure. So if you have a question, please type it in the public chat window in that left-hand corner of your screen. And like I said before, we'll go ahead and read them aloud and answer them aloud. All right. We already have a question here. Oops. We have multiple. So the first one is, will the results of the small-scale interventions, sorry, I was having a little problem with my screen here. Will the results of the small-scale interventions be published in time to inform the selection process for the upcoming large-scale interventions? That's a good question. I think for some of those interventions, we will have near final results by the time we make the final selection on the large-scale awards, but they have taken a little bit more time than we anticipated to get up and running. So I can't say that we would have all of those results ready to go. But, it's an ongoing process. So, as we're making the awards, we'll start with a particular strategy, but they are two-year initiatives. So we'll also look to, continue to refine those as we, get more results from the small-scale interventions, and then also as we get, results, interim results from those as well. So, yeah, I think that's what we can do.
I think it's Myra's.
Yeah, so the next one is, what happens to countries not in the list you mentioned?
So Myra, I think that's Myra from Kenya. So I think it is. So for Kenya, Kenya is certainly eligible for the large-scale interventions, and we hope to receive some good proposals from organizations that plan to implement in Kenya. So that's an opportunity for the large scale. For the enterprise marketing support, Kenya is also eligible and actually likely to be the first country in which we pilot this. So that's something that we very soon plan to discuss with CCAK. So Kenya is certainly involved. Other countries that are not on the list, right, again, we have this restriction to our focus countries, less India and China, with the current money that we have. But we certainly hope to raise other money and help you raise money. Whether that comes through us or directly to you, it doesn't really matter to us. But we want to make it easier for you to raise funding in any country. So whether that's a focus country, India, China, or something that's not a focus country, again, we want to get the scale in as many countries as we can. So we certainly hope to be able to help in other countries, just we don't have that funding right now to make awards outside the 6 of the 8 focus countries.
Great. So we have a question, what role can government play in bringing these to scale?
I can probably take that one as well. Government is actually absolutely critical, and I think when you look at most of the successful behavior change communication programs or behavior change programs in general, they have a strong element of collaboration with the government. Government has huge reach out there. Every day, their health workers are talking to people, whether they be in clinics or in outreach formats. They're talking, and so they certainly need to be engaged. We need to be working in collaboration with them, and that will only strengthen the programs. We can't fund governments directly with this, but we certainly want them to be engaged. And in general, of course, they set the tone for the entire environment in which we work in. So our programs will only be strengthened, for example, if we can make the case to health ministries that their nurses should be talking about household air pollution when they're treating a child for pneumonia. That's going to strengthen our programs and is a potential intervention for organizations to help governments learn to do that better.
Great. So what kind of country restrictions will be in place for the enterprise marketing support? So just to clarify there again, the funding is limited to 6 of our 8 focus countries. So those would be Guatemala, Ghana, Nigeria, Uganda, Kenya, and Bangladesh. So those are the only countries in which we could fund the enterprise marketing support. And like I mentioned before, the RFPs for that funding will be released on a country-by-country basis. So we won't release one RFP to solicit proposals from all 6 of those countries, but rather we'll have multiple RFPs that will one will solicit proposals for Kenya, one will solicit proposals for Bangladesh, and those will be released sort of on a rolling basis over the next year or so.
Yeah, and just to build on that, that's in the short term. If we can make the enterprise marketing support a product that is interesting to donors, think of how, if you're familiar with our Spark program, that's sort of that's a grant mechanism that we have that now many different donors contribute to. So if we do a nice job developing this enterprise marketing support mechanism in collaboration with national alliances, then perhaps other donors would be willing to fund it as well, and then our restrictions are removed depending on the other donors who contribute. So that's certainly a direction that we hope to take this.
Yep. So the next question, will the Alliance be funding any more product development, or will future grants be limited to marketing? So I would say absolutely that we will continue to fund enterprises and organizations in other ways. We're not limiting our grant programs to only marketing. This is just one piece of our sort of enterprise funding. In terms of product development, a lot of that was previously funded under the Pilot Innovation Fund, which we're hoping to launch later this year. Still looking for some funding for that. But all that to say, our goal is that, yes, we would be able to continue to fund that kind of work. And then, the marketing grants would, just be another part of our grant program and would look to, amplify, where we've already funded other enterprises.
Yeah, just to restate that, reinforce that, Spark continues. We want PIP to continue, Catalytic Small Grants to continue, the suite of grants that we have to support different enterprises. We want to continue, and we continue to raise funding for.
So another question, how will you measure the impact of the campaigns, and what benchmarks will they set against? So measuring impact will be very important for us, as I mentioned. We are actually planning to take on the evaluation, not ourselves, but work with a firm to independently evaluate the large-scale interventions. So we're in the process of bringing that support on, but we'll be looking very thoughtfully at what that impact is. And of course, one way to measure that is through sales, so we'll look at that, but we'll also hope to look at, to what extent are we seeing increased adoption in the areas where we're running these campaigns. And we'll also look at sort of what some of those intermediate steps are to sales and adoption. So, in what ways are we, firstly, how many people are we reaching, but also how are we, making changes in terms of their sort of knowledge around, how the use of solid fuels is impacting them and what some of their options are for, a cleaner and more efficient experience. And then how are their sort of attitudes changing towards those, cleaner solutions. So we'll be looking at a lot of different indicators to measure that impact. In terms of benchmarking, that's a good question. I think as we mentioned, behavior change communication has been used in a lot of other sectors. So I think that's sort of how we would benchmark our
it's a challenging thing to do. If you're talking about, if you've got $1.5 million to spend over 2 years, how much behavior change can you expect? It's challenging to benchmark that. It really depends on the context as well. So, we're actually looking for help from partners on that as well, and from the group that will help us with evaluation. So I think we actually had another one above.
Yeah. Okay.
That one, yeah.
So for countries that are not in the approved list, what would be the best way to share pilot program social impact reports with the Global Alliance? So that's a good question. So I think we would look to make those available on our website, as we do all of all of our research, and then would likely organize another webinar like this to try and get that information and those results out to all of our partners. But we're also open to ideas on how best we can share that kind of information with those in our sector who are interested but are not maybe directly involved with those. So another question: for the large-scale interventions, will preference be given to BCC techniques tried and tested in similar sectors, or is there room also for testing less conventional methods, approaches that have had some success in other sectors? Yeah, we're absolutely interested in tried and tested, as well as trying out new things. So, we want to see a balance of that, but it's certainly open to learning from what has been successful in other sectors. Okay, so another question, who will be eligible to apply for the large-scale programs? Is this only independent marketing firms, or can enterprises apply? Yeah, good question. And so, independent marketing firms. Well, it's organizations that are able to implement behavior change communication programs at scale. Those might be civil society organizations. They might be NGOs who are experts in behavior change, or sometimes called social marketing. It might be those types of experts. It might be marketing firms who are commercially oriented. In terms of cookstoves and fuels enterprises applying, it is possible. The issue there would be that whoever is applying has to make a case that their intervention will be promoting the category, so it will be a category-wide effort rather than just promoting an individual brand. Now, it is perhaps possible for an enterprise to organize an intervention, or perhaps in partnership with others, to come up with an intervention that promotes the entire category. But for the large-scale work, it cannot be focused on just one brand or product. But again, just sort of make the point that while, maybe enterprises would not be the direct recipients of that kind of funding, the idea is, again, that we're building demand and, usage across the entire category. So we're hoping that, our enterprise partners would obviously indirectly benefit from those campaigns as well.
Myra's
okay, Myra. Okay, Myra, that sounds good. Will solar technologies presumably be a strong part of this? I think, as always, the Alliance remains technology neutral. So if we, and again, the goal with these is not to promote any particular brand or, in some cases, any particular technology, but rather to, raise that entire category of, cleaner and more efficient options. So solar could certainly be a part of this, but I think it will depend on the proposals that we receive and the regions in which we conduct this work, and what technologies are available in those regions. So as always, it could be we're technology neutral, but I can't say for sure how strong the emphasis would be on solar use of its other technologies. Okay, so we'll just wait a couple more minutes to see if we have any more questions. Okay, so it looks like no more questions right now. So thanks again to everyone for joining us today. Like I mentioned earlier, this was recorded, so we'll be making that available on our website. So please share with any of your colleagues who weren't able to join today. And like I said, we'll be releasing the RFP for the sort of large-scale interventions in February, and then we'll start releasing RFPs for the enterprise marketing support in March. So look out for those. And we're excited, to get this this initiative up and running, and we hope all of you are as well. And again, we hope that we can only, bring more attention and support for our sector through this work, and also, of course, reach the beneficiaries that we're all looking to reach. So. Thanks again for joining, and I think with that we'll sign off.
Yeah, I just want to say thanks very much to everyone as well. Thanks for listening. We're really open to your feedback, so don't hesitate to send us feedback or other questions by email, and we're happy to answer that. So thanks very much.